Okay, so the next topic we are going to cover is the Loop Cut and Slide tool. Now, this is one you're going to be using a lot, so make sure you're awake for this video. So we already talked about what an edge loop is, and we can use edge loops to cut across our mesh in order to add more vertices. So if we wanted to divide this cube horizontally, we can do that by adding a loop cut using the Loop Cut tool. So with the cube selected, let's tab into edit mode, and we're going to add a loop cut across here by pressing Ctrl and R. Now you'll get this yellow preview cut, and when you hover over different edges on your mesh, it will show you the way in which the cut is going to be made. So if we want to divide it horizontally, we can hover over this edge, click to cut. Now you'll see that when I move my cursor, the new edge loop is now moving along with it. This is the Loop Slide tool. It is automatically activated when you place a loop cut, so you can drag to slide this edge where you want it and click to confirm its placement. So naturally, if you press Ctrl R to pull up a loop cut and double click, it will just drop that loop cut right where the preview was. Now, the preview is always going to be at the halfway point of whatever edge you're hovering. So I'm hovering this edge here, and it's cutting this edge exactly in half. So we can use loop cuts to quickly divide our geometry in half by either double clicking to place, or if you, let's say you click to confirm and maybe you accidentally move your cursor a bit, and you want to make sure that this is exactly at 50% at the halfway point. Instead of left clicking to confirm, we can right click to drop it, which will drop it exactly at its default halfway location between these 2 points. But you'll see that the cut is still made. Right clicking did not cancel the operation, just as it did in extrude. It did not cancel the operation itself, only the movement portion of the operation. We can control how many cuts are made into our mesh by, when we press Ctrl R and we get our preview, instead of clicking, if we scroll the mouse wheel up, we can increase the number of loops. If we scroll it down, we can decrease. The preview will still show up with the correct number, and of course you can just click to place it. You'll get the edge slide tool, confirm the placement, and now you'll see we have 3 cuts just by scrolling our mouse wheel. We can also affect the number of cuts we make by coming into the Loop Cut and Slide panel and changing this value, number of cuts. Moving the factor slider, we'll move it up and down. And moving the smoothness will create some bulges and indents depending on the value. Now, Loop Cut can also be accessed here in the toolbar. However, when you use Loop Cut from the toolbar, you'll see that you get the same preview cut, but the scroll wheel will no longer increase the number of cuts, and when you click to place, you will no longer automatically have the edge slide mode activated. To use edge slide with the loop cut from the tool panel, you will have to click and hold and drag where you want it and release to confirm before you placing a new cut. And of course, the only way to increase the number of cuts using this menu icon is to do it manually through this Loop Cut and Slide menu at the bottom. So just another reason I prefer the hotkeys is that it automatically places you into slide mode, and you can use the scroll wheel to affect the number of cuts. So if we add a loop cut to each face of this cube, we end up with 24 equal faces instead of 6. We can remove loop cuts by holding Alt, clicking on the loop, which will again select the entire loop, pressing X to delete, and in the delete menu coming down here to where it says edge loops. This will delete the loop while preserving these faces. Now, we've divided this geometry up equally, and if we wanted to continue to divide it, we could continue to add loop cuts until we had our geometry subdivided to a resolution that we want. However, there is a much faster way to quickly divide your geometry, and that is with the subdivide tool. I'm just Control-Zing to undo all these until I'm left with the default cube. To subdivide this mesh more quickly, all we have to do is make a selection of the faces or edges we wish to divide. In this case, if I wish to divide this mesh evenly, I would just hit A to press all. Now to subdivide it, all we have to do is in edit mode, right click and come up to this menu option that says subdivide. You can press it here and you'll see now that we have the exact same result as we did after we added all those loop cuts, but with just a much faster process. Now, right-clicking in edit mode brings up the contextual menu, which we talked a little bit about in a previous video. It is dependent on what selection mode you currently have active, but all of the contextual menus can be accessed in any selection mode by coming up here and either going to the vertex menu, the edge menu, or the face menu. Now you'll notice when I change my selection modes and right click, that subdivide is present in all of them. And you may be thinking, like, why is subdivide in the vertex mode? Because when you select a single vertex, you cannot actually divide it. You cannot divide a single point in space. The operation will run, but nothing will happen because there is nothing to divide. Now this is just because if you are in vertex mode and you select multiple vertices, you can subdivide those edges. So it will create a point between those and do its best to connect them. So just bear in mind that you can subdivide, although the right-click menu is contextual to what selection mode you have active, you can always subdivide in any of them. So we notice that when we subdivide our mesh, the little menu in the bottom pops up like it does for our other operations. Keep in mind, as a review, this menu is contextual to the last operation you performed. So performing any other operation or making a new selection will get rid of that menu, and the only way you can get it back is to undo your subdivision. I'm just going to delete these edges by holding Alt, clicking, pressing X, and hitting edge loops. So the only way to get that menu back is to perform the operation again. So let's do that really quick and take a look at some of these settings. Now the settings I want to show you for the subdivide operation are here where it says number of cuts and smoothness. Now, by increasing the number of cuts, we are essentially telling Blender how many times to perform the subdivide operation. So you'll see that when I increase it a few steps, the mesh is being continually subdivided giving us more vertices on this cube. Now smoothness will be defaulted to 0, which means that none of these vertices we've created will be transformed in any way during the operation. But if we increase this slider, you'll see that Blender is smoothing out these vertices as best it can to give this object a more rounded shape until we max this value at 1 and we're left with a sphere. So that is all I want to discuss for the Loop Cut and Slide tool. Again, this is probably going to be one of your most used tools in Blender, so we will of course show you how to use it on a practical demo. And in the next video, we're going to cover the bevel operation.